All right, welcome back to Epic Agents, the best in real estate podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about real estate investing and how agents can help their clients with the real estate investing journey. Joining me is the founder of Branch Wealth Partners, Greg Lafferty. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here. Appreciate you having us.
Great to have you. And also with us is Christina Wright, Greg's right hand and professional friend finder, from what I understand.
That's right. Thanks for having us.
A lot of different hats, I'm sure, Christina. Yep. Yeah, great to have you. Really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a topic that's going to bring a lot of value to our real estate agent audience. This is a niche, a category of business that really interests me that I think might be a little intimidating for some agents to consider wrapping their arms around and getting involved in. And I think it seems, I don't know a lot about it. It seems a little complex to me as well. So I'm hoping we can dispel some of those myths today and
Sure.
help agents open their mind to the opportunities of helping their clients with investment properties. Greg, before we dive into that, I'm going to ask you to just share a little bit of your background and then the inspiration for Branch Wealth Partners.
Sure. I'll be happy to. I'll kind of try to keep it limited and not go too
Your life story in 3 minutes.
Life story in 3 minutes. So back in 1970, no, I'm just kidding. I just started investing in real estate about 28 years ago. I was working for NASA at Kennedy Space Center, and I was bored, and nobody really understands that, but how that could even possibly be happening, because the shuttle is such an amazing piece of science, right? Everyone's like, oh, the space shuttle is really cool. Yeah, it was until about 3:30. Then you had to go home, and you really couldn't take it with you. And so everybody jokes I'm a rocket scientist, and I guess in part I am, and so I like that. And but I decided as a young man in my mid-20s, living on Cocoa Beach, either I get productive or I get in trouble. And so I got productive and started buying my first rental properties and investing in real estate and those kind of things. So fast forward 28 years of still doing that, still growing my portfolio, still maintaining them and managing them and all those kind of things. And along the way, about 10 years ago, I started a new construction business. And I've started other businesses since then. I'm just kind of a serial entrepreneur. And, I had this vision for Branch Wealth Partners to be able to allow any investor along the continuum between novice all the way to retiring investor some value in education, consulting, advisory, and asset management services. We go to our stock sales guys, our investment advisors, right? And they kind of help guide our investment strategies on the paper side. It's really, they're telling you what to buy that they sell, but they're going to get a commission on it. It's okay. I get that. Like, I love commissions. I'm a broker and I've been in sales most of my life. So I get that. But who is going to sit down with someone and help advise them on their investment portfolio if they're trying to make real estate the primary source of their wealth strategy, right? Their primary wealth strategy tool. And because we can invest in fine art, we can invest in automobiles. There's a lot of things we can invest in, but I choose real estate, and that's what we do. So that was kind of the genesis of Branch Wealth Partners. It's I tell people it's my brand new 28-year-old company, and we officially launched kind of in the January timeframe of this year, and already managing assets for other people and really enjoying that. So that's kind of where we are and kind of where we're headed. So.
Really took 28 years of lessons learned, right?
Yes.
And real estate investment.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears out there.
And everything from, what were those early investments like?
Oh, they were terrible. So there were many times I had to take my gun, and it was fine. It's just, it's all good. I was a 200-pound black belt trying to figure it out.
Right.
So, but no, it was fine. I did a lot of rehab to rent. Is what I called that back in the day. It was before the BRRRR method really was monikered, right? But I would buy stuff that was just absolutely trash and fix it up, rent it out, refinance it, and do it all over again. And it was a good time. Bought a condo on a credit card. I mean, I can tell you some stories. I did some stupid stuff as a guy in my 20s. And that frontal lobe was only partially developed. It was just developed enough just to decide that I needed to do this, but not developed enough to make great decisions.
It does take longer in men, from what I hear. Christina can probably agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm living proof, right? In fact, I'm 54 and it's still going. Still developing.
I'm right behind you.
Yeah, right.
I'm 36.
Right. So Christina was like, "Did you check that decision? You sure you made a good one there?" So in fact, my son's 22, and it's a standing order that if he's about to make a decision, he has a lady friend he's supposed to call and ask. Right? Before you make any decisions, call her. So it's just a standing order for him. But yeah, so those were some of the early investments, and it was a great time. But I do things a little bit more strategic now.
Well, yeah. Well, you've sounds like you've taken all this experience and developed a system, and also sort of a one-stop shop.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's like if somebody really has a strategic direction in putting real estate at the top of the list for their investment strategy, then we want to help them with that, all aspects of it, right? Management, some people call it property management. I call it more asset management. We do take care of the tenants and toilets and maintenance and all those kind of things. But we're looking at it from the overall asset strategy as well, not just the day-to-day, that too, but not just it. So I'm not really interested if Sally inherited her mama's house and now the tenants aren't paying and I just need to evict them. Well, go hire an attorney. Okay, that's not what we're here for. We are here to help you build your wealth strategy and help you retire one day. That's what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
Christina, jump in here and share a little bit of your background too and how you connected with Greg.
Yeah, for sure. So I unofficially started my real estate investing journey, I guess, 8 years ago when I bought my first property out of an estate, fixed it up, lived in it for a few years, sold it right when COVID happened, bought some land up in Terrell, across the street from the lake, and then later flipped that. And then that's kind of when I really started understanding real estate investing. And we were living in a house, decided to make that a rental property. So we bought another house in Concord, got some tenants in our old house. And then now I'm active under contract on another property where my mother-in-law is going to live in. So I've kind of slowly started building my portfolio over the last few years. I guess it's kind of been like a house a year over the last kind of
that's a good strategy.
Strategy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I eventually want to make the house that I'm currently living in a rental property, and we'll move somewhere else. So I'm taking the couple of year approach. And then I guess about 2 years ago is when I discovered Robert Kiyosaki, and I had no idea who he was. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it changed my life. So read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Then I discovered Bigger Pockets and Brandon Turner and all of his creative financing books. Discovered all of Robert Kiyosaki's people, who is it? Andy Turner and
Andy Tanner.
Andy Tanner. He has a team that has also wrote some books that I read. And then I started going to Real Estate Investor Association meetings, learning little tricks through those. I bought a few programs. I did a Subject to program. I did a finding distressed houses program where I'd basically drive around neighborhoods and look for houses that looked vacant or that no one was taking care of, and then try to buy them. And then, started kind of fine tuning my strategy and really being like, okay, what's going to be the fastest, most efficient way for me to become an expert real estate investor? So, as the professional friend finder that I am, I started really fine tuning my networking skills, and my real estate agent at the time introduced me to an attorney who then introduced me to Greg. And that is where my real estate journey has completely exploded. And just by having Greg as a mentor and then going through our mentorship program, I'm under contract now. So
yep, under contract. I love it. It.
How about?
Yes.
Good.
I discovered Robert Kiyosaki for myself in not much earlier than you did. I was a little bit late to the game, but I downloaded and listened to to Rich Dad Poor Dad on a trip with my wife in our RV to the Florida Keys one year. And it didn't fully ruin my vacation, but it did. I did realize that, I don't know if anybody catches the irony of, the whole asset liability.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to this Robert Kiyosaki.
While you're driving an RV
while
on
I'm driving
vacation.
an RV. So the RV's gone. And I'm also thinking about how I can make our current house into our first investment property.
At least you brought your wife back and didn't sell their RV down in the Keys, bring everybody back.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an RV, but there's certain things I think you should do before you get that RV. And I kind of did things backwards, right?
It's all good. We all make mistakes.
But I love that. I love that book. That was one of the, if I had 20 books that have changed my life, that would be one of them. Yeah, and that's one that I think that folks who aren't familiar with, and this audience probably is, mostly generally familiar with Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad.
I wish I would have found that book 10 years ago
instead
no doubt.
Of
2 years ago.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. Same. And I also want to remind listeners and viewers that we're actually recording in Concord, North Carolina. You guys are based in your office is in Kannapolis, I think,
right,
and we're in the Lake Norman area, the Charlotte metro region for listeners who might be in other markets. And Terrell is it Terrell or Terrell?
I think it's Terrell because I'll call it Terrell and people will correct me.
Little town on the north end of Lake Norman, which is for folks who aren't are familiar with Lake Norman. Lake Norman's kind of like it's North Carolina's inland sea, and it reminds me a lot of South Florida. It's like a lake version of South Florida. It's an amazing place. Terrell's really the last frontier. It's being developed pretty quickly right now. Yeah.
Yep, I bought it a good time and sold it a good time.
Yep.
Probably could have waited a little longer and made a little more money, but I'm happy.
Greg's nodding. We'll talk about that off air.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, on the topic of real estate investing, so Greg, you brought 28 years of experience in real estate investing when you had this vision for Branch Wealth Partners and sharing this knowledge and helping people make real estate investing their primary wealth strategy. Share for listeners just a little bit about what that looks like. What does a program with your company look like, and sure. how do you coach mentees?
Sure. So what we like to think about is that it's a continuum on a journey, right? On one end of the continuum, you have the aspiring, maybe they bought, one or two little rentals kind of thing, and they're kind of getting started. Maybe they haven't even taken their first step. They just know this is what they want to do, or they have an idea. And on the other end of the continuum is kind of that retiring investor, that person that's been managing their own property for 40 years, right? And they're trying to figure out how to really retire on this thing. What does that look like? And in the middle, there's kind of the stuck people. They've gotten a few under their belt. They've kind of gotten to the point where they just can't keep up with all the management of it all by themselves, and they're looking to figure out, okay, how do I grow this thing? Because either I grow or I stop. It's one or the other. I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I can't really stay here, kind of thing. You don't want to go home. You can't stay here. Okay. So, you're kind of stuck in the middle. And so, at Branch Wealth Partners, we like to help the entire continuum. Okay. So we can take the aspiring investor, someone who's just trying to get started, and walk them through about a 90-day educational cycle. It's a weekly for about 8 or 9 weeks where we get together and meet up, and we walk them through the basics. It starts with mindset. It ends with, okay, let's go get some stuff under contract. I mean, it's everything in between. So discussing financing, discussing asset protection, and creating your entity, those kind of things, bringing in some folks out of my network to be subject matter experts into their particular field. And because I don't need to give legal advice, I skipped everyday law school, right? So every single day, every single day I skipped every one of them. I did take a business contract class, and that was wonderful. Aced it, I-5 in summer school. But besides that, I skipped every other day. So, so you walk through that, and then we have monthly meetup groups that we bring other subject matter experts in and try to broaden their mind, and that's where you kind of get in the middle guys in the continuum too. You start to add them in there. They have all the fundamentals, but then how do they grow? And to be able to open up their minds to, well, let's talk about multifamily syndication, or let's talk about big industrial projects, or let's talk about what's the value of having the right insurance product, held up against and protecting your assets. What does that look like? So just really broadening their perspective. And but then also having those middle people, taking them and managing their assets for them. So helping them offset the maintenance and the collecting the rent and doing the evictions, whatever has to happen to take those day-to-day operations so they can focus on what's good for their skill mix, right? Mm-hmm. They can offload the stuff that they're not really good at and keep the stuff they are if they want to. And then you take the retiring investors, sit there and go, okay, let's kind of help you with the management of this, maybe even reposition it a little bit, maybe take and distribute your assets among the younger investors and reposition you into a better portfolio that's a little easier to manage, whatever, maybe do a tax deferred exchange and roll it up into something like a triple net, something that's just like a bond, almost just money comes in, right? Mm-hmm. And so just kind of reposition things, kind of clean it up. A lot of them don't want to take that initiative because they're comfortable in their assets that they have and they don't really see what it could be, right? And what it could look like. So we can kind of sit down and strategize with them about that. So it's the overall continuum.
Multifamily syndication. How many?
That's a big word.
That is.
It's almost like you have to put on a suit and tie and put a pinky out.
I feel underdressed for
yes,
that.
Yes, you are. Anytime you speak commercial, you have to button up a little bit, put a pinky out.
And you use words like capital
and
LP and GP.
Yes, we have to use our terms and we have to
cap rates.
Stretch out just a little bit more.
How many of your mentees come into the program feeling like that is beyond their reach?
Yeah, all of them. They might not even know the term, right? They might they look at these large apartment complexes and go, "Wow, somebody is doing, somebody big is doing that." And like, no, it could be somebody like you one day.
Yeah,
right.
I actually worked at a bank for 10 years, and there was a syndicate desk. No idea what the syndicate desk did. Now I understand.
Now you know.
10 years later, finally.
Wow.
The education is power, and we've always been taught that, right? I mean, that's why you go to school, right? You're supposed to get educated. Okay. And so we were joking just yesterday. I'm not sure the gentleman was using a joke. I'm not sure when I'm going to use a Pythagorean theorem. I'm like, my mason uses that like every day to square off a foundation. But okay, we'll let that go. Okay. The brick mason uses it, but we'll let that one go. I didn't argue with him, but in marketing, he probably doesn't use it very much. So, but yes, education is power, and education, allows you the foundation of upon which to build wealth, right? Mm-hmm. And so, just exposure on what is syndication, what does that look like, how's it structured? Just get some ideas, just let them think bigger, right? Because none of them come in there going, "Hey, look, I really want to." Be. They're like, "How do I get a rental house?" Okay, cool. You can get a rental house, that's fine, but let's look a little bigger.
Mm-hmm. Scale.
Yeah.
How do we scale?
Yeah, and you really sounds like you're coaching these mentees to not just be investors, but to be entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
and to get their household money right, so that then later they can do bigger things. Right.
Starting with that mindset and analyzing where they are financially and getting their house in order first.
That's right.
Yeah.
Establishing their why, establishing their goals, having a long-term picture.
Yeah. And, investors are not the, we're talking to real estate brokers all over the country, I imagine, here on this podcast. Investors are not the easiest people to work with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we even go and educate brokers locally about how to work with investors. What does that look like? What's the mindset? I mean, crack open this cranium right here. What's inside there? Not much. I had a neurologist appointment yesterday, and they were all joking at the office. First, it's a finder's fee first, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's right. So we all good in there first. And
I knew that was coming.
It's kind of like going to the barber for me. It's a finder's fee.
He's a part-time comedian.
Yeah, I am. And so if there's any gigs open for the weekend, I'm available. But no, so how do brokers deal with and then think like an investor to kind of get into their mindset so they know how better to serve them, right? Yeah. And brokerage is in part a service business, right? How do we serve our clients? But then how do we not waste our time as a broker servicing those clients, right? Can I can I do enough of a back of an envelope analysis or understand what a broker, or excuse me, what an investor buyer is looking for, so that I can determine what deals to position in front of them and how to speak their language enough so that, we call it like buzzword compliancy. Like, can you at least get the buzzwords down so that when you present the opportunity to the investor, you get their buzzwords right?
Yeah. We found that real estate agents either work with investors or they don't. There's typically a pretty clear line between those who do and those who don't. And typically those who do are also investors themselves at some capacity. And we've been finding that the agents that don't work with investors are either scared because they're uneducated and they just don't know how to talk to them, or they have had a bad experience and they just were caught up with an investor who didn't really care about their time, and they would submit like 30 offers in a month, but nothing would happen because when it comes to real estate, investors are emotionless and it's all about the numbers.
Right.
And it's like, I'm going to lowball 20, 30 houses and see if anyone bites. And that's just what's going to happen. So it's helping agents navigate that and knowing what kind of questions to ask them in the beginning so you can qualify them. Like, okay, is this actually an investor who has money who is going to close, or is this someone who just is going to use someone else's money, has none of their own money, and just is trying to like find some kind of gem?
Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in the YouTube universe we live in, right, where there's plenty of real estate gurus out there on the TikTok is what I like to call it. That rent a Lamborghini just long enough to be able to shoot a few videos and gain some traction out there, some views and likes. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that. But there are people out there that kind of fake it till they make it, and there's a play for that. I mean, I get it. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Everybody has to start. I started somewhere, and thankfully, I ran into some brokers that were patient enough with me to kind of help me through the process and help me learn. But, to educate the brokers that like, look, there are some that are going to waste your time, but then there are also some that can form some long-term loyal relationships, right? I mean, I have one buddy of mine now that's a commercial broker. He's a dear friend of mine, and we've done lots of transactions together, and we've spent time together, and I just don't do a commercial deal without calling him up. I just don't. I don't care if I found it myself, right? So, there's that. There is some loyalty out there, and so in the branch world, that's part of our offering too. Is helping those brokers understand then how to deal with an investor. But at the same time, while we're doing that, we're sitting there going, hey, how many brokers are not taking advantage of the field that's ripe in front of them? And I don't know how many rooms we've been into of brokers where you go, how many of you guys, have your own investment property, and nobody raises their hands? I'm like, what? It's like riding a bike to work when you work at a car dealership. Like, I'm not sure how that even looks, Yeah. And most people, their greatest, quote unquote, greatest investment is their own home, right? Well, then if you multiply that by about 20 times, what does that look like? Right. So pay attention.
Yeah.
So anyway, that I'll take a step back, but that's kind of what we do from a broker education side.
Yeah, I think that it feels complex and complicated outside looking in, which might be a reason why so many real estate brokers want to avoid working with investor clients. And of course, the concept of the fact that investor clients it's all dollars and cents. It's bottom line. They're emotionless. Not to say they're not human. I'm just saying we're not, they're not shopping for their dream home. Right.
Yeah.
They're not
They really don't care about the color.
Yeah. The uglier the better, honestly.
Yeah. Smells like money. Smells like money.
Yeah.
I mean, if it stinks when I walk inside, that's a good deal. I'm probably going to write an offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. So you find there are brokers, and for listeners in other areas of the country, real estate agents in North Carolina are called brokers. Yeah, right. We're all brokers. All three of us are licensed brokers here in North Carolina, and you find that most of the time there are brokers who work almost exclusively with investor clients, and those who don't at all. And what are some other reasons why that sort of might be scaring real estate brokers away from working with investor clients, and what sort of opportunities are they missing out on?
I think it's the lack of education. I think that they just kind of freeze up when they're talking to an investor because maybe they think an investor's smarter than them for some reason, and they just don't know. They don't know what kind of questions to ask. They don't know like how to qualify them. They don't know what kind of where they're going to get the money, or they don't understand taxes and tax implications. So it really, to me, it's the lack of knowledge. And honestly, when I went through pre-licensing, it was a pretty clear like line between being a retail agent and then being a commercial agent and then being an industrial real estate. They set these really like kind of firm lines, and it's like, if you're not qualified in that area, then you probably shouldn't do it. So like, I remember going through pre and I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm never going to be a commercial agent because now I'm just learning how to be a residential agent. So I don't know if that kind of takes into play and it just makes people feel like, oh, I can't do that. Like, I don't know that. That's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, there is math and analysis in the investor world. Not everybody are math people. I mean, they're just not. And sometimes it gets very intimidating. But I think even non-math people could look up, non-analytical type people could just kind of look up and go, okay, well, I'm not sure I know how to do the exact math and feel the numbers out. But at least if I know the questions to ask, everything's outsourceable. Right. They can find a tool on the internet. They can do all kinds of things to plug in some numbers and get a number and then go, hey, look, there's the calculated return. If I know how to do it, the Excel sheet will actually do the math. Right. And I think Christina's right. They're just a little bit intimidated, but I think they're missing out on, investors who want to grow their portfolio will figure out a way to consistently transact for that portfolio. So even though the market conditions will change, their class of property might change, right? They might say, well, office product right now is not where you want to be, right? But maybe multifamily is. They're going to transact, and the money's going to move where the returns are, and so they're going to interact with their portfolio on a consistent basis. So. Whereas the retail buyer, they're gonna buy their home and they're gonna sit. So everybody talks about, well, get your repeat business and referral business and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, a person buys a house, they're gonna be there for 5 years.
Right.
So in that 5-year period, your investor might buy 50 properties. Like, I don't know which is better, right? Wasting a little bit of time on an investor who might go through, a bunch of offers to get one, but he's going to buy 50 over the course of 5 years. Whereas a retail client, you're going to put them in your car and talk about the color and where the shopping is and all this kind of stuff and get through that process. You're going to spend hours with them too, right? And they're going to get emotional and get mad about things and other things like that. That's all fine. And then they're going to camp for 5 years and not buy another product. So you tell me what's the better use of time. I don't know, right? I don't know. I've never done a time study on that. But
I can take a guess.
I can take a guess. And sometimes the transaction sizes are going to be bigger with an investor product, investor client, right? So there's some multifamily type stuff out there, or maybe we go and sell them a 10 home portfolio, right?
Well, not to mention with the NAR settlement, and investor client will probably be more inclined to agree to a retainer.
That's correct.
For a buyer agent rather than. Who knows? And of course, that's all subject to change. And that's a topic for another podcast
It's almost like the weather. If you don't like it, just hang on a minute. It'll change.
That's right.
Right? We don't really know how that's going to shake out. But certainly there's value to the investor, right? And the investor typically will have some capital behind them, as opposed to a first-time home buyer that's trying to, put 3% down on an FHA or something that has no cash. And they're going to look at the seller to pay for their closing costs. I'm not sure how they're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then back
to be seen.
Back to the lack of education or the lack of knowledge. I think agents don't know that there are places like Branch Wealth Partners that they can use as a resource and partner with. And we consult with real estate agents, and we will consult with real estate agents and their client. Or if they're comfortable, we will consult with just their client, and they can come in, sit down with me and Greg, and we'll look at their portfolio. We'll look at whatever deal they have that they're working on, and we will help strategize with them. We will think of their different exit strategies, figure out where they're going to get the money, figure out their whole portfolio as a whole, help them scale. Really sit down with them and dig deep into their
and
situation.
Just be a resource.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Brokers should leverage their resources, just like they leverage their handyman, they leverage their bankers and their title agents and other things like that. Their attorneys, they could leverage us as well as a different resource.
Christina mentioned the word scale. My ears always perk up when I hear somebody say scale, whether it's scaling a business or marketing, advertising, whatever it might be.
182. That's what I weighed on the scale today.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Sorry.
It's a little lighter than me. What are you doing? Topic for another conversation.
Every day.
Yeah. It's repetition. But anyway, I'm sorry.
That brought up another good point, though. The fact that brokers can lean on branch wealth partners when they are working with an investor client. If it's outside of their area of expertise, you can consult with both the broker or their client or both. I was wondering how agents can reach out and how utilize branch wealth partners as a resource. And also, before I forget, it reminds me of Dan Sullivan, who says, "Who, not how."
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just who do I need to go to get this done?
Right.
Not the how.
Delegate.
And, certainly they can come to our website, branchwealthpartners.com. There's a contact form, and certainly our phone number and everything's on there. Christina's contact information's on there. So
I'm sure you'll plug us in on the notes of the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just leverage, just reach out and let's talk about what that looks like. All right.
Of course, I'll have links and contact information in the description for this video and the notes for this podcast episode. I'm going to ask one more thing before I let you go. Is it practical, do you think, for a real estate agent to serve both retail clients and investor clients? And I'm hoping you're going to say yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah, the best ones. Because I think that at some point, during the retail interaction, they're going to come up with listings. They're going to uncover opportunities. They're going to really fit their investor clients, right?
Yeah.
They're going to uncover. I get calls fairly frequently from brokers going, "Hey, look, I'm about to take this listing and this might not hit the market very well. What do you think? Right? Do you have any interest in this?" And so they're already uncovering opportunities for investors now, right? Every day. And so if they have a stable of investors that they trust and they like to work with and all that, it's a phone call away to help their retail client.
Yeah. I made an agent friend a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me that he's basically 50-50 investor in retail. And he's like, what happens is I will sell someone their first home. And what I say to them after that is, awesome, you have your first home. Let's get you an investment property next. And they at first are like, oh, really? And he educates them. And he has just built his business in that way, turning his retail clients into investors. Yeah.
You want to talk about making an impact for your clients on their lives. Real estate agents, and I'm one of them, love to talk about how they are helping clients' dreams come true. What's a better dream than helping a client build wealth for them, for themselves and for their family, sustainable, lifelong and legacy stuff too as well.
It's a partnership.
That's right. And leaning back into Robert Kiyosaki, it could be argued your individual home where you live, is that an asset or a liability, right? Yeah. And but an investment property is 100% asset, right? So to be able to make that long-term impact as a broker on the lives of our clients, to help them strategize on how to retire on that income stream one day, right? It's no better place.
Absolutely.
Right? Or to one day help them take advantage of some tax rules and everything else to get them out of their individual single family home and roll that into something else. And
it's funny that you brought that up. I've debated that and it's controversial for a real estate agent to debate whether or not the home you live in is an investment or a liability. But I think that is open to debate and something to consider.
We don't really talk about it in front of our spouse.
That's
right. Usually where it starts to go south real fast.
I have lately, since I've been trying to talk my spouse into making our current home our first investment property. So, but that's again topic for another conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining the podcast. I think this is going to bring a lot of value for our agent audience, and I hope we've provided some actionable advice for them as well. One more time, how can they learn more and connect with you guys?
Sure, just come on out to branchwealthpartners.com, and our website's out there. We have a Facebook page, we have a LinkedIn page, we have all those things. If you can't find us, it's because you're not looking hard.
I'm pretty sure my phone number's on there. My email address is on there. Our pictures are on there. So you will see us.
Yes, that's right. And our team.
In the show notes and the description for this podcast episode and this video. Epic Agents, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode.